What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the vlog. Thanks for pressing play. Today we are out here with the C8 Corvette Z06. We're at a car show, and wouldn't you know, we have a C7 Corvette Z06 and in my C6 Corvette Z06. So I thought, what better time to talk about the generations of Corvette? We almost had a C5 Z06 as well, but let's go over the differences. And they're pretty massive. Just physically, these cars look totally different. We're not gonna drive them today. We're just gonna do a high overview of the appearance and maybe some quality talk and stuff like that. All right, guys, so we are here, like I said, at the car show. Obviously, we got the C8 Corvette Z06 out. I'm getting these all mixed up because this is gonna get really confusing. It's gonna be a tongue twister here at the end of the day because the C8, the C7, and the C6, all Z06s lined up here. Like I said, we almost had a C5 Z06 as well, but we do have a C5. It's not a Z06, but it's enough for us to show the progression up until what is current. And it's interesting because you can clearly see the progression here until this one. This one is just totally different than anything else that Corvette has offered in the past. So we're gonna kind of go over these. These are, obviously this is a friend of mine's car, and then this is the C6 Z06 that appears on the channel from time to time. We got a bunch of mods still planned for this car as well, so stay tuned for that. But we're gonna start, I guess, with the C6. So by now you guys know this is a 2008 Corvette Z06. It is a 2LZ interior, and it is a pretty cool car. This has the LS7, of course, the 7-liter V8 engine. It kind of started, for me at least, it started the love of Corvette. The C6 is what really ended up captivating me to where we're at today. So other than the fact that I've added some of the aero bits to this and everything, this is a really, really amazing car. You guys have seen the previous videos I've made with this. I've done a lot of mods to it. There's a lot still to come. The progression is pretty obvious because moving on to the C7 Corvette Z06, you can pretty clearly see where the inspiration came from. We got the same long sloping hood with the, in this case, the LT4 engine, which is the supercharged 6.2 liter engine, pumping out 655 horsepower this time instead of the 505 of the C6 Z06. This one also was the first one to be offered in a convertible or an automatic, whereas the C5 and the C6 Z06 was only manual transmission, which is actually kind of cool. But moving on to the newer cars, now all of a sudden the automatics are taking over. With the C7 Z06, we got a much more aggressive aero setup. Of course, bigger wheels and tires. We got 20s in the rear, 19s in the front. More horsepower, forced induction, of course, first time for a Z06 there as well. And just a sportier, more up-to-date look over the C6. Now, the C6 did come in obviously a ZR1 as well, so did the C7. And as of right now, the C8 Z06 is kind of the top dog. There is no ZR1 yet. If there ever is an actual model that comes out that's called a ZR1, we'll have to wait and see. But like I said, I just kind of wanted to film these things side by side because it's kind of interesting to have 3 generations of Corvette Z06 all kind of sitting here looking pretty. The C8 here is definitely the outstanding one because it doesn't really look anything like the previous generation Corvettes. And I've actually been told that a couple times from a couple different people. So this is just a totally different animal. And as much as I love this to me is just more Corvette. I know it's weird because this is a Corvette, obviously, but it just doesn't have that same Corvette feel that a C7 or a C6 or even the C5 up here does. And like I said, this is not a C5 Z06, but it is a C5. In general, it's pretty much the same minus a couple different engine things. And of course your sport suspension and stuff like that made it the Z06. But just having technically 4 generations of Corvette here is pretty cool. Now, obviously 3 generations of the Corvette Z06 is what we're really talking about, but yeah, pretty cool. Coming around to the back is where people that are really purists of Corvette are gonna notice the difference. So with the C6 Corvette, we had the 4 round taillights. That was a big deal whenever Chevy moved away from that with the C7. They added what still appears to be 4 separate taillights, but they're not round anymore. And technically they're not even separate. Fast forward even further to the C8, where they took that kind of look and ran even further with it. Now all of a sudden, they are very obviously not 4 separate taillights, and they are totally different looking. So again, the C8 kind of takes what the C7 and C6 offered and just totally spins it on its head. So this is what we get with the new generation. Then of course the older ones, again, with that sloping hood, short back end. You can see the same thing in all 3 of those generations, whereas with the C8, totally different. The rear end is much longer. The front end is super short. Now, obviously we're not driving these cars today. I've driven all 4 of these generations, honestly. And again, the C5, the C6, and the C7 all drive somewhat similar. It's not until you get into this car that it's completely different. So the C8 is, again, like I said, kind of the outlier. It's not necessarily a bad thing, don't get me wrong. It's just different. So that's kind of the way I like to compare the C8 to the C7, because you guys know I love my ZR1, but it is a totally different animal. Again, looking at the side profile, very easy to tell the difference between that and, of course, the C7. I really love the C7. I really love the C8. I really love the C6. I mean, honestly, you can't go wrong with any one of these cars, but seeing them in person like this, it's really cool to be able to see the differences in the generations and how much things changed. So coming over to the C5 again, guys, this car also had the 4 round taillights, and this was kind of a thing for quite some time. The C4 had round taillights, then the C5, and then the C6, and then all of a sudden the C7 was like, nah, we're done with round taillights, and people really did not like that. But this is where we're at, and ultimately, this is where we've ended up. I absolutely freaking love this thing, but I also really love this, and I also really love this. So again, guys, if you're in the market for a Corvette, it really doesn't matter what generation you get. These cars are all really incredibly fun. So this is not exactly a stock startup, but we're gonna hear it anyway. Well, that sucks, because now it's gonna ruin the rest of these. That sounds pretty good though. I like it. All right, so his having headers is kind of gonna kill this thing, but let's hear the C6. This is totally stock exhaust. Yeah, this car needs an exhaust for sure, but still not bad. Of course, 7-liter V8. Whenever you get this thing moving, it sounds pretty freaking good. And then, of course, we got the stock C7 Corvette. Not bad. So we can kind of see a progression. If the C5 was stock, you'd see a better progression, but the C6 was definitely quieter, the C7's louder, and the C8 literally, my wife is constantly saying, this is the loudest car she's ever ridden in, because this thing is just super loud. So the C5 Corvette interior, guys, it's actually a really clean car. But just to give you an idea, obviously this is probably around a 2000 if I had to guess. You can definitely feel the 2000 era coming through. And of course the C6 Corvette interior, you guys have seen this on the channel before. This is a 2008, still has that 2000s vibe to it, of course. We started to get a little bit more in the technology there with the actual touchscreen head unit, push button start, a little bit better interior quality than over the C5. And of course the C7, like I said, guys, this is where things started to really turn up. We got some carbon fiber, aluminum, leather wrapped everything, touchscreen, and the actual dash screen was an LCD as well. A lot more performance, a lot more sound deadening. We had heated and cooled seats, much better interior quality. This is where Chevy started to really realize that the Corvette could be something more than just a fast car with a plastic interior. And then, of course, the C8 Corvette, where the technology and the material really just stepped it up to another level. We have a really big touch screen there. The entire speedometer is, of course, digital LCD, carbon fiber, aluminum, leather wrapped everywhere again, but a bunch more use of carbon fiber, much nicer seats, much nicer material all around. Napa leather with Alcantara on the ceiling or the roof of the car. Yeah, much higher quality stuff here. And then on the 2001 C5 Corvette, guys, we have the LS1 engine. The exhaust is obviously modified, but otherwise all stock. So you can expect most Corvettes are going to have a hood that opens this way, which is kind of their thing. But yeah, moving on to the C6, we have the Z06, of course. So it's got the 7-liter LS7 engine. No mods to this one. This one is pristine. It is untouched for now. But that's what your engine bay will look like. Again, hood opening up that same direction. Moving on to the C7 Z06, same thing, the hood opening up like that. We got the LT4 supercharged, pretty much untouched. I believe he does have an air intake in there, but that's it. Still very powerful engine, very reliable engine. Again, where things change is, of course, the C8 Corvette Z06, because number one, the engine changes placement. It's not in the front anymore, it's in the back. But even then, the back hatch doesn't open any special way, just opens normally. So in here we have the LT6, which is of course the Z06 flat plane crank, putting out 670 horsepower, looking like a freaking Ferrari. So there you have it, guys. That is 3 generations of Z06 and 4 generations of Corvette. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. So if you liked what you saw, please smash that thumbs up button. Let me know you're liking the content so we can keep creating this kind of stuff for you. I had a friend bring out the C6 Z06 just because I'd be able to have 3 generations of Z06. Like I said, we almost had 4, would have been really cool. But hopefully this kind of gave you a little bit of an inside look at, you know, what these cars really stand for and what they look like. I mean, if you're in the market for a Corvette, of course, any one of these, like I said, will be good for you. But this one right here is really... it really stands out. It is definitely the different one in the pack. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'm gonna have loads of content like this coming you're not gonna wanna miss. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next upload.